Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for our webinar, Beyond HB 1312, Navigating Immigration Enforcement for Childcare Providers in Illinois. My name is Angela Farwig, and I am the Vice President of Public Policy, Advocacy, and Research at Illinois Action for Children. Let's go to the next slide, please. Before we begin, our Spanish interpreter, Alejandro, is going to provide instructions for how to access Spanish interpretation. Alejandro?
Hey everyone, I'm just going to go over the interpretation instructions. Hola, buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alejandro. Les voy a explicar cómo activar la interpretación en español. Si están en una computadora, en la parte de abajo de la pantalla van a ver un icono de un globo con un mapa mundi. Le dan clic a ese icono y luego donde dice español. Si no aparece ese icono, hay que darle clic a los tres puntos que dicen más, luego interpretación y luego español. Desde un celular o iPad o tablet, uno tiene que tocar la pantalla para que aparezca un menú en la parte de abajo. Luego darle clic a los tres puntos que dicen más, ubicar el icono de interpretación, darle clic a interpretación, luego darle clic a español y luego en la parte de arriba, donde dice algo como finalizar o listo. Y ya. All right, should be set.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. I am now going to share just a few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the webinar. We will also be sharing slides from the webinar. Closed captioning is available. You can click the CC or live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. 1 hour of Gateways credit is available for this webinar. We will share a form for you to complete near the end of the webinar where you can put in your information to get that credit. Please send in your questions using the Q&A feature on your screen. We will try and answer as many questions as we can using that feature. We will also plan to have a few minutes for discussion of questions during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Finally, please note that this training is intended for educational purposes to help early childhood programs understand best practices. It does not constitute legal advice. Webinar participants should consult an attorney or state guidance for any specific legal questions or situations. You can go to the next slide, please. This is our agenda for the webinar this evening. We are going to start by grounding in some background and the purpose of why we are here tonight with you. We will recap the requirements of HB 1312, a law that was passed in the fall of 2025 regarding immigration enforcement at licensed child care centers. We will review warrants and example protocols for programs. We will share some ways you can support staff and children. We will discuss some real world situations and scenarios. We will have a few minutes for Q&A, and then we will close out. So as we mentioned earlier, in the fall of 2025, the Illinois General Assembly passed HB 1312, a bill that requires licensed child care centers to take certain steps to promote the safety of children and families. We held a webinar with the Illinois Department of Early Childhood and the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services on March 3rd that covered the legal requirements and guidance from state agency partners related to HB 1312. And you can access that recording through a link that we will be putting in the chat. Tonight's webinar is going to focus on implementing HB 1312 in real-world situations and helping child care providers, both centers and homes, feel prepared to support children, families, and staff if immigration enforcement activity impacts their program. At the end of the webinar, participants will understand best practices and be equipped with tools and examples for responding to situations involving immigration enforcement and keeping children, families, and staff safe and secure. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Rosario Hernandez, to share more information about the bill, HB 1312.
Good evening, everyone. I will be walking through what's in the legislation. So HB 1312, again, is meant to provide additional clarity and guidance. It helps providers understand how to prepare should immigration enforcement be at their door, with the ultimate goal, as Angela mentioned, of protecting the safety and well-being of children and staff at the center. This bill builds upon non-regulatory guidance issued by state agencies. And so the bill in the legislation prohibits the sharing of information about a child or family's immigration status, whether that's perceived or actual status. It also requires centers to establish and update policies so that no child is excluded or discouraged from attending a program. So what this means is that every licensed child care center is required to create a written plan of action for interacting with immigration enforcement. There is a policy template that state agencies have posted on their website, and we can share with you all so that you can see an example. The legislation also requires licensed childcare centers to designate private spaces and to update emergency contacts biannually. This is practice that is currently, being implemented. Licensed childcare centers are required to have emergency contacts on file, but this is saying we have to do it twice a year now. The legislation also requires that parents and caregivers are notified if immigration enforcement occurs at or near the center within a reasonable time, and that the late pickup policy is updated so that we can ensure children are their safety is being prioritized. The legislation also requires that state agencies, so the Department of Child and Family Services, as well as the Department of Early Childhood, make resources available online. And we will also share their websites so that you can see the current resources available. With that being said, I'll hand it over to our partners.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Barajas. I'm a training and program specialist with the Resurrection Project. And today I'm going to be going over quickly differences between warrants and some additional resources and where you can find, just additional resources for like emergency planning and like know your rights materials. Go to the next slide. So first I wanted to quickly refresh everyone on what your rights are if you are in any interactions with police or federal law enforcement agents. So first, you have the right to remain silent. In order to exercise this, you must say loudly, "I wish to remain silent." Also, something that we really encourage folks, if English isn't your first language, really encourage folks um, to learn this phrase, because again, we can never guarantee the language that these officers are going to speak. So definitely a good one to practice. You also have the right to not permit entry into your home or car if police or ICE don't have the necessary signed judicial warrants, which is what we'll go over in the next slides. You also have the right to not sign anything. So you may be pressured into signing documents. You have the right to not sign them. You have the right to speak to an attorney and be represented by an attorney. Although in immigration, attorneys are at your own expense. Here in Illinois, we have resources that I'll go over at the end. And under the criminal justice system, attorneys will be provided free if you can't afford one. And then also something to note, you also have the right to make a telephone call if you are detained. This is something that you may have to advocate for yourself if you're once you're being processed, but you have the right to make a phone call. So it's going to be important to memorize the phone number of a family member or a friend who can get your emergency plan started and contact an attorney on your behalf. The next slide. So I'm going to go over the differences between judicial warrants and administrative warrants. Judicial warrants are what would be needed for police or law enforcement agents to enter and search private property. In this case, I'm going to go over administrative warrants, which is the warrants that immigration officials or ICE agents will will normally be carrying. It is a little more difficult. It is a lot more difficult to get a judicial warrant, so they will most likely have something like this. This is a warrant that is issued by the Department of Homeland Security. This is a warrant for civil immigration violations, not a crime. These are generally not enforceable by law enforcement officers, definitely not by local law enforcement agencies. These are specifically directed at federal immigration officers and not local law enforcement. This does not give them permission to search or enter private property. These are also important to know. These are also just signed by other immigration officers. So you'll see at the bottom, like that it just says immigration officers, and that's who these are signed by, which is a big difference from the judicial warrants. We can go to the next slide. So this is a sample of the judicial warrant. This is what police or law enforcement would need, or ICE would need to enter or search private property. So here we see clearly stated that these are issued by the United States District Court. They say search and seizure warrant. If they're able to produce a judicial warrant, gonna be really important that we check all of the details on there, because sometimes even when they are able to produce these, there could be errors or they could be past their validity. So important to check the name on the warrant, making sure that everything is spelled correctly. There'll be an address on there, that the address is correct. And then there'll also be dates and times when the warrant will be valid for, and places it'll be valid for. So important to look at all of those dates and times. And then at the bottom, these will be signed by a judge. So this is going to be like the biggest difference between the judicial warrant and the administrative warrant. These are much harder to get. And like I said, these are also only valid for a specific period of time. So even getting them renewed is a little bit difficult. So going to be important that if police or immigration come to your workplace or your home, that you know what you're looking for and that you're asking to see these documents before allowing them to enter private property. We can go to the next slide. So here we just have them side by side. On the left-hand side, we have the judicial warrant, which at the top, again, just wanted to note the United States District Court, search and seizure warrant, making sure that all the info is correct. And then at the bottom, these will be signed by a judge. These are also slightly longer and look more official. This is what they would need to enter private property. And then on the right-hand side, you see these are much shorter. These also are issued by the Department of Homeland Security, which we see at the top, and then at the bottom, these are signed by other immigration officers. We can go to the next slide. Also, before going into this slide, just wanted to note a couple of other things. When you are at home, you don't have to open the door to police or ICE if they don't produce the judicial warrant that we saw. You don't have to open the door to them. You can ask them to slip the warrant either under the door or show you through a window. Really just wanted to, reinforce that, just because if we do open the door or even slightly, that can be seen as an invitation for them to enter. So we want to avoid any situation or any any of our actions being misconstrued. So definitely want you all to remember that. If you have a family member or if you want to help somebody who is detained by ICE, you can locate them using the locator.ice.gov website. You will need their name and date of birth. Also, folks, once they're processed, they'll also get an A number. So if you afterwards, if you are able to talk to your loved one, if they are able to give you their A number, going to be important for you to write that down and keep that with you. A number of our attorneys have said that that's been like more accurate in helping find people in the system. So something to keep in mind. We also have the consulate's emergency phone number on here. We have the Mexican consulate. We've had a lot of yeah, they've just been really great in helping get medications to people who have been detained, resources to people, and helping Mexican nationals if they have to return to Mexico. Yeah, if folks are detained, going to be important that we're activating the emergency family plan. And if folks don't have one or need help creating one, we have resources. So we have like a template that people can follow. And we also can help people with that emergency plan at our workshops. And then also, finally, making sure that we can secure financial resources. If you have a loved one who is detained, if they are eligible for bond, you will have to pay for that 100% upfront. And just be thinking about attorney fees. If you're able to find an attorney, if you go the private route, making sure that you're thinking about those costs. And then obviously making sure that you also have like an emergency fund to help support your family if yeah, if the worst comes to happen, if you are detained, making sure that your loved ones still have support and are able to live their lives or able to pay the bills while you are detained. We can go to the next slide. Really want to highlight the website that we've worked on. So we have the IllinoisImmigrationInfo.org website. This is a website that we put together in collaboration with the state, the city, ICER, TRP, and a number of other immigration organizations throughout the state. So great resource if you are looking for legal resources, or if you are looking for know your rights information, if you want help on a case, if you want a consultation. This is like the hub specifically for people here in Illinois. So really encourage you all to go through that. We have like FAQs, just like a great variety of resources around know your rights. And then if you are witness or suspect ICE activity, we have the number for ICER on here. So making sure that we're calling that number immediately to report and to make sure that we're connecting families to resources if their loved ones are detained. And then, yeah, for anyone who's outside of Illinois, Informed Immigrant is a great resource around know your rights and legal resources for other states. Go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. And that's all. But yeah, really encourage you all to check out our website. And I'll hang around if there are any questions on warrants or any of that. But thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica, for really giving an overview of warrants and know your rights information. It's really important, especially, whether you're a center or whether you're a home provider. So it's really important to know what your rights are. So at this point, we've kind of discussed a little bit about what the legal requirements are for House Bill 1312, and we've discussed the different type of warrants and what they mean. Let's discuss potential implementation protocols and staff actions you can take to prepare ahead of time. So it's really important to identify who is the person that's going to be interacting with the ICE officers. We'll go a little bit into depth, but for HB 1312, for a licensed child care center, it has to be the center director. Obviously, not everyone on the call is, from a center, but really be mindful and think about who is a good person to designate that authority to when it comes to identifying a person to talk to ICE officers. And in addition to that, training staff on procedures and protocols that you will develop is really important. It's also very crucial to run drills, especially under different scenarios, to prepare the team. In the same way we kind of prepare for natural disasters by running drills, it's important to run training and drills to be prepared for the situation as well, especially when we're thinking about how potentially like distressing and anxiety inducing this process can be. It's just better to be overall over prepared than under prepared, and to really run drills based on different scenarios. Base Best case scenario is that the ICE officials are, being cooperative, they're being patient, they're listening. Worst case scenario, maybe they're being hostile, maybe they're being aggressive, maybe they're not listening. And so it's really important to kind of help prepare staff for different scenarios, so as to be able to protect the children and their rights in the moment. In addition to all of that, we highly recommend developing and using internal protocols and charts based on your program and your needs. They make it really clear what the procedures are during, before, and after interaction with immigration officials. Ideally, it would be great if they are easily accessible and easily readable, whether it's like a flow chart or different visual simulation, just so folks can be really prepared on what to do based on the scenario. We can move on to the next slide, please. So just to kind of help you prepare for developing internal protocols, for reference, you can feel free to use the QR code. When you follow the code, the first link is the Illinois Immigration Toolkit, which discusses preparedness checklists, know your rights information, and just additional resources that could be helpful to keep in mind when you're developing a protocol for your program. So now let's discuss like potential protocols that you can make to prepare ahead of time based on your program. You can move on to the next slide. So preparing for a staff response protocol, this is why we really stress the need for training and having internal protocols charts ready, so that everyone kind of knows what to do, especially because it can kind of happen rather quickly. One of the resources that you will receive at the end of the presentation is a flow chart on what to do if ICE officers are present, depending on where you are as well. So not everyone has a front desk, but the folks that are working closer to the entrance is what we're referring to. It's important that they're most likely the people that will be encountering the immigration officers. Ideally, we're thinking about a scenario where the building where you are is locked and closed, and so they're like knocking and trying to get in, which is what we recommend. So do not answer any of their questions. The front desk staff should not answer any of the ICE officials' questions, and they should not open the door. In fact, they should call or page the designated administrator. Like you said, for the centers, it'll be the center's director who's supposed to be the contact person. But keep in mind, whoever that person is going to be needed to go to the front entrance or whatever entry point they're trying to come into to interact with the officials. And then we recommend that person ask them to either slide the warrant or have the warrant be put up against the window to assess it. If they don't have a warrant, feel free to say something like, "Thank you for your cooperation. Since you don't have written permission and a judicial warrant to enter our site, I'm going to ask you to leave in order to avoid disrupting normal operations." If the ICE agents try any activity outside the warrant, say something like, "I do not consent to additional activity taking place." So while this is all happening simultaneously, it's also important to develop a procedure to notify all staff that this is occurring, some sort of like intercom, walkie-talkie, code system, or alarm that notifies people of like, "Hey, this is what's happening. Let's initiate the proper protocols to protect the children's safety." If the warrant is valid, move away any person of interest. Move away any person that is not the person of interest. If the person is present, you can ask them to meet the ICE officials outside. Like Jessica Barajas mentioned, once you open the door, it's very quickly easy to lose control of that situation. So we don't recommend opening the door for them. So that's most likely people that are going to be interacting with ICE officials, classroom staff should, if they're out and about, let's say they're coming in during lunchtime, and so it's like cafeteria, they're going through the lobby or something like that. Ideally, move away yourself and the children from the site of the agents, and also obviously continue supervising the children. Develop a safety plan of what to do based on whether point of entry they're coming from. It's really important that the classroom staff avoid engagement with the ICE officials and allow the designated administrator, the center director, whoever has the authority to handle the situation. When developing a classroom protocol, make sure that it's really rooted in maintaining the classroom calm and also protecting the children from distress. And when we're talking about training staff, developing internal protocols, it's really important to incorporate everyone that is involved in the care of the children, whether it's staff, volunteers, substitutes, really anyone. Make sure that they are actively being trained, are up to date on drills, and also know where these internal protocol charts are so they can have access to them rather easily. One of the things that you can develop that could potentially help you is if this happens, do this, like a staff response flowchart, and know where it is and have it handy. Next slide, please. So next we'll be talking about parent communication and the need for it. In the chat, a sample text was just brought up. I'll refer to it in a bit. But programs and providers should notify families and caregivers if enforcement activity has impacted the program, such as if law enforcement has asked for a child's personal records, if ICE was present near the center or the program. The method of communication can be through email, app, message, but overall the message really needs to be calm and clear. Please avoid using a phone tree system. They tend to be slower and not have enough information and can potentially just lead to miscommunication and anxiety. So if helpful to do a tailored curated message. And in fact, we encourage you to create a parent notification message that's pre-written and easily tailored to the situation. We dropped a template in the chat for reference, but essentially you could say something like, we want to inform you that we've received reports of possible immigration enforcement activity in the area surrounding our center today. At this time, the activity is not taking place on our campus. Staff are continuing normal classroom activities and children remain safely supervised inside the building. Children will not be released to individuals listed, will only be released to individuals listed on child's approved pickup list. We are closely monitoring the situation and will follow all appropriate guidance. Something like that is clear, concise, and also is informative to the caregivers, especially if they need to tailor the pickup situation, whether they need to engage the late pickup policy or they need to go through the emergency contacts to pick up the child. It's just best practices for the caregivers to understand what's going on so they can do what is best for their family. Last slide, please. Documentation of the events is really important. Programs and providers should document and record the time and nature of interaction, what happened and when. Any requests made, whether it was about a child's record or a warrant or a subpoena, what have you. Document what happened or actions taken by everyone, the staff, ICE, anyone involved. And ahead of time to prepare, what you can do is create an incident log template and have it ready for use in case you were to encounter immigration enforcement. It's just something handy to have in case that situation were to happen. It won't necessarily be an afterthought and you won't be scrambling and trying to develop something ahead of time. So we discussed designating a person who will be communicating with ICE officials. We discussed creating a plan and training staff on protocols to run drills on different scenarios, practice response protocols, and the need to communicate effectively with parents and caregivers, as well as documenting everything that has happened just in case. Please refer to the resources mentioned for further support. And I will be passing it over to Deborah Chalmers, who will be discussing supporting staff and children. Thank you.
Good evening. I am the Director of Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation, and I'm going to be speaking briefly about a few minutes regarding supporting staff and children. Immigration enforcement activities can affect both staff and children in a variety of ways. Children impacted by this activity may display signs of anxiety, hyperalertness, fear, withdrawal or avoidance of social interaction with peers and teachers, nervousness in response to the situation. This level of activity could also act as a trigger for some children. Aggression, anger, and outbursts are also common responses. Difficulty with concentration and memory, emotional dysregulation, such as mood swings or difficulty managing emotions. And conversely, staff can experience some of the same things emotionally as well. So, what can be done in the now? I'm going to give you some tips for the classroom and then some tips that can be used with staff. So, let's talk about children first. Establishing, maintaining predictable routines, clear visual schedules, clear, consistent daily patterns or routines, help to reduce children's anxiety and give children more of a sense of control. Responsive relationships, continuously building trust through empathy for their situation and experiences, validating children's feelings. Be mindful of your own tone of voice and how you're using your words. Co-regulation and social emotional learning, building in emotional literacy as a part of your curriculum, teaching self-regulating activities that children can do to calm themselves in times of high stress, using breathing techniques or breath work, having calming corners. And also sensorily be aware. Be mindful of triggers like loud noises or bright lights, and certain smells can be emotionally triggering to a child. Providing some type of sensory activity to help regulate that child or children. As for staff, maintaining and creating supportive working environments, as you've heard through this presentation, through regular and consistent staff meetings, where staff can be provided a space to reflect on how they're feeling and how they're being impacted. Always in the event of crisis, be honest with children, use age-appropriate language when addressing the situation, event, and or circumstance. Center or family child care homes have an action plan in the event of immigration activity, again, which has been stated. Be mindful of your own emotional well-being and capacity to deal with difficult situations. Know when it's time to seek out assistance or have a conversation with someone. Children need regulated and calm adults in difficult situations. Do your own self-check before responding. Ongoing training and resources related to helping staff to understand the connection between children's social emotional well-being and mental health, and the emotional well-being and mental health of the staff that work with the children. Recognizing signs of secondary trauma, burnout, and compassion fatigue, and seeking out resources to help staff with better ways of coping. Maintaining partnerships and working collaboratively with parents, as been shared in this presentation. Also develop plans with certain parents who may be more at risk during immigration enforcement activities. And lastly, seeking out a infant early child mental health consultant as one of the many resources at your disposal. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bree Stormer with Illinois Action for Children, and I'm going to talk about some real-world situations providers may face during periods of heightened immigration enforcement that go beyond immigration enforcement coming to your facility, but could still impact you if there is enforcement in your area or if families that you serve are being impacted. So if we could go to the next slide. So the first question is just determining if enforcement is happening near your program, and how to react in that situation. And so it can be tricky sometimes to know where immigration enforcement is happening. The ICER social media does provide updates. Other groups do provide updates, but those are sometimes a little delayed just because when there's a lot of immigration enforcement, it can take a while for that to get out. And so, one resource that I personally have found very helpful, and I know others in my community have, are neighborhood watch text groups. These are volunteer-led groups. They're often connected to nearby schools, just groups of parents who are interested in keeping their neighbors and families safe that work together to report on when immigration enforcement is happening in the area. This is obviously going to vary a lot based on where you are. There's a lot of kind of local variation in this volunteer group, but if you contact schools nearby or you contact your city council person or alder person, they'll be able to let you know if there are groups that you can get into, and they're going to have a lot of real-time updates about what's happening if there is something in the neighborhood on a given day. And I've got the Mr. Rogers quote here because these are good people to know. These are the helpers in your community. These are the neighbors who are stepping up to support families. And so knowing these folks will be a benefit beyond any period of heightened immigration enforcement. On a given day, if you're making a decision about whether to take a child outside during periods of heightened enforcement, I would say first and foremost, don't panic. Use your best judgment. Rumors can fly, people can get scared. And so, if there's no documented enforcement in the area, you're probably okay to maintain children's routines. But if something isn't sitting right with you or you're hearing about heightened enforcement, you can make the choice to keep children in the facility to ensure that they don't witness anything traumatic. Lastly, there were some questions in the last webinar about calling law enforcement if you witness what you believe to be unlawful ICE activity or if ICE comes to your facility. I want to note that there is something in Illinois called the Trust Act, which means that state and local law enforcement is not permitted to assist with immigration enforcement, but that doesn't mean that they're going to disrupt immigration enforcement. And that's because it's federal law enforcement and local law enforcement, and they don't want to clash with one another. And so if you witness something that you think might be unlawful, contacting ICER, contacting those helpers is the way to go forward. The way that we've seen this play out is that if something's determined to be unlawful, that is usually dealt with in court later. So I wanted to answer that question as it came up on the last webinar. Can we go to the next slide? We also know that parents are concerned about being detained, and this may be true whether or not they have a documented status. Folks are experiencing this fear right now. And so things that you can do to help for parents who are concerned about detainment or deportation: regularly update emergency contact lists, encourage families to designate multiple trusted pickup contacts, create pickup policies in the event that a parent is unable to pick up their child for any reason. And so if there is heightened enforcement, offering some flexibility and options to parents might be one way forward. And then a resource not all folks may be aware of that is something that is a really good thing for parents to know about for a whole host of reasons is short-term guardianship. A short-term guardian can be designated to care for children for up to a year just by filling out a form. Parents do not need to go to court to designate a short-term guardian. They can revoke it at any time. And so this is a really good resource. There's legal aid that can help you fill it out. There are cases where providers have opted to become short-term guardians. There is we are not advising that or suggesting that. That is a deeply personal choice. But regardless, you can let parents know that there is, for any reason, whether they're a single parent and they want to make that decision, or if someone is ill, knowing that this is a resource that's available could be very helpful for any parent. Can we go to the next slide? Lastly, I wanted to touch on attendance disruptions. We know that we've seen increased in attendance disruptions during periods of heightened immigration enforcement, and we know that that impacts you all in the case that those are families using CCAP. We also know that if a parent isn't going to work, that could impact their access to CCAP. So we just really encourage that you proactively communicate with parents around attendance and work together to problem solve. If parents are concerned about drop off and pickup, you can offer some flexibility around those. You can offer that they add additional drop off and pickup contacts. Those helpers can be really helpful. I know that mutual aid in my community does drive some folks who are scared to leave their house to work. And so if that's something that folks are willing to volunteer for, they could drop a child off at care and then drop the parent off at work. So that's a really good resource. I also wanted to make folks aware of something called the attendance exemption request form. This is only available to centers right now, although there is advocacy to make it available into homes. And this is a long-standing document that can be used in special cases where attendance may fall below the CCAP requirement. It's been used in the past for things like blizzards, causing a center to close for several days. But it has been approved for use for immigration enforcement. So we have guidance here about how to do that. If you have additional questions, definitely contact your CCR&R. And note that it will be handled on a case-by-case basis. So anything you can do to demonstrate that there was heightened enforcement in the community, like news articles or social media posts, will help make that case. Can we go to the next slide? All right, I'm going to hand it off to Naoma and Celia to go through some scenario practice.
All right. Hello, everyone. I don't know if y'all can see me. If I could be pinned, that would be amazing. So I'm not just a voice in the void, but my name is Celia Bartel. I'm the Advocacy and Engagement Associate with Illinois Action for Children, and we're going to be going through a brief scenario walkthrough. Before we get started, I want to give a brief content note that the next activity does include brief hypothetical scenarios, including immigration enforcement and childcare programs. And we recognize this topic may be difficult or personal for some participants. So if you would like to step away at any time, please feel free to do so and return when you're ready. Our goal is to help providers feel informed and prepared while respecting everyone's well-being. With that being said, I will pass it over to Naoma to get us started with our first scenario, which is if immigration enforcement arrive with a warrant.
Hi, everybody. So we're going to do a little role playing right now to just get folks a sense of what to do in case of the scenario of a judicial warrant being presented by an immigration enforcement agent or an administrative warrant being presented by an immigration enforcement agent. So I'll set the scene. So here's the scene. It's 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning at Little Steps Child Care Center. Children are in classrooms, and I'm in the office when two people in camouflage vests come to the door. They say they're immigration enforcement agents, and they show a document they call a warrant. So I'm looking at the document, and it appears to be signed by an immigration official, not a judge. So the agent says,
we're looking for someone and need to come in to check. It will only take a minute.
So, having looked at the warrant and identifying it as an administrative warrant, I will respond, this is a sensitive location. I have the right to remain silent. I will bring the site director over to speak with you.
As the director, I will then request their identification and look at the document. I need to check whether this is a judicial warrant signed by a federal judge, whether the date is correct, and whether the name and address are correct. After reviewing, we recognize that it appears to be an administrative warrant, not a judicial warrant signed by a judge. In that case, the director or the point of contact would then say to the agents, Thank you for your cooperation. Since you do not have a judicial warrant to enter our building, I cannot give permission for entry. I'm going to ask you to leave so we can avoid disrupting normal operations in our facility.
And meanwhile, while she does this, I, as staff, or any of my other staff members, will call the ICER hotline, move children and families away from the situation, and document what happened. So let's review some of the key steps. First thing, staff did not allow entry to the facility. An administrative warrant means no entry is allowed. Staff went and moved the children and the families away from the situation and called ICER. Celia is going to drop a full response checklist as part of a toolkit, a guidance packet that we've developed into the chat now, and you can learn more about the next steps that we've reviewed over the course of this presentation and that we've tried to model for you just now. But we're going to move to scenario 2, which is if a judicial warrant is presented, and I will set the scene there. So again, it's 10:15 on Tuesday at Little Steps Child Care Center. Children and providers are in their classrooms when 2 people in camouflage vests arrive at the door. They say they're immigration enforcement agents and they show me a warrant.
The director will then need to review the document, and as director or the point of contact, I need to check, is this a judicial warrant? Is it signed by a federal judge? Is the date correct? Is the name of the person they are looking for spelled correctly? And is the address correct? After reviewing, and it is a judicial warrant, I would say, yes, all of these are correct. This does appear to be a valid judicial warrant. To the staff, the director would then say, let's move any children, families, or staff who are not involved away from this area to limit exposure. And then to agents would say, I will take you to the location of the individual listed on the warrant.
And what if they try to speak with someone else or go somewhere that's not listed?
If that happens, I will say, I do not consent to this additional activity taking place.
We'll also report the activity to ICER in real time and complete an incident report with written documentation for our records and management if that is part of the protocol for our facility. So let's review key steps here. The agents presented a valid judicial warrant, which means that provider compliance is limited to the parameters of the warrant only. Agents can only access what is on the warrant. We move children and families away from the area. And again, to review this and other protocol that we had discussed over the course of this webinar, please check out the checklists that are in the guidance packet that Celia is dropping into the chat now. And thank you for listening to our scenario. We're going to pass it over to our colleague for Q&A. Angela, I think.
Yes, this is me. So sorry. I was having trouble, with all the Zoom things. Thank you so much, Naoma and Celia, for walking us through some of these real world scenarios that early childhood programs may face in navigating immigration enforcement. We do have just a few minutes potentially for Q&A. I know we're a little behind our schedule. We were able to answer some questions live in the Q&A box, so hopefully folks that submitted questions saw those answers. And I'm looking, I don't know if we have any other questions coming in right now. All right. And team, I somehow seem to have closed out the question list. My apologies. So if there is a question coming in, I might need to get a little help. Oh, I see one.
Yes, we just got one question.
Okay, great.
If it's a home daycare and they don't care and barge in like they have been doing, who else can we contact in the moment if we can't count on the police?
That is a great question. I think, Bree, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I think that in this instance, the best thing to do is contact the ICER Family Support Hotline, which we've dropped into the chat, as well as if you are a part of a community group, definitely let the community group know what's happened. Obviously, that's a very scary situation. We've seen that happen on the news, and it's quite frightening. But we have also seen a lot of those cases lose in court later. And so Important to let members of the community who are working on this know. ICER will connect you to any legal supports that may be needed, and community members can help get you connected to mutual aid if you need to have anything fixed or supported. And then going from there, it really is up to the courts, because law enforcement doesn't want to clash with law enforcement. We want to, the judicial will sort of, the judicial branch will take a look at that and make a determination as to whether that was unlawful. And if they do barge in without a warrant, that is considered unlawful entry.
Thank you so much, Bree. There's one more question before we move on, which is, am I supposed to give up a child with a correct warrant?
Thanks for that question. I think I know we're running a little short on time. We did review the different types of warrant. There is a judicial warrant. We would recommend that you follow the protocols that we outlined here. We also can potentially follow up with this particular question with our partners at the Resurrection Project and respond to that later. I know that's a really challenging and difficult situation, so we just want to be really sure. So just please review all the resources, and we will follow up with our partners at the Resurrection Project on that particular question. Okay, I know there's a couple other questions coming in now, potentially, or maybe we answered them all. I do think we need to maybe move on to the closing of our webinar. Okay, thank you so much. So before we wrap up, we do have Gateways credit available for this webinar. If you can complete a form that we will put in the chat, if you complete that form, you can enter your information so that we can get you credit for attending the webinar. If you have any issues with completing the form, you can also reach out to us via email. You can email registration@actforchildren.org and share the date and name of this training in that email, and we will work to get you your Gateways credit. My colleague Yvette has put that information in the chat as well, and we will share this information after the webinar. We can go, I think, to the next slide. To close us out, just want to say that HB 1312 establishes important protections for families, children, and staff. In support of and in addition to these protections, it's really important that programs have clear staff protocols, communication plans, and emergency procedures so that they are as best prepared as they can be to support children and families when immigration enforcement is impacting their communities. We know that implementation and preparedness requires ongoing support, so we are going to be sharing some additional resources that will be made available to you. To reiterate, the webinar materials, including the examples of what we went over today, will be shared via email. We will also be hosting office hours that you can sign up for, where you can get one-on-one support with things like reviewing your procedures or having some scenario-based coaching. So definitely take advantage of those. We'll be sharing the sign up for office hours in the follow-up email. And I think that is all we have. I think we can just go to the last slide. Thank you so much for joining us. Please stay tuned for a follow-up email and reach out if you have any questions at advocacy@actforchildren.org. Thank you again for being with us. Take care, everyone. Have a good night. I believe we can stay on for a few more minutes if there's any other questions, but this is the end of our webinar.